Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our meeting, the Audit and Risk Committee. It seems like a long time since the last meeting. I suppose that reflects the quarterly nature of our meetings, plus also, not unnaturally, you folk have been heavily focused on many other things other than risk in the form of your long-term plans. So there's been a lot of water under the bridge since we last met. So look, before I start, can I just reflect to all officers here, thank you very much for your hard yards. I very much enjoyed looking through our papers. We've got the chance for a good discussion today, and that's a really important part of a risk committee, so thank you for your work. I wonder if we could please start with joining me in saying the karakia. Whakataka te hou ki te uru, whakataka te hou ki te tonga. Kia makina kina ki uta, kia matara he hiki ani tura, he tio, he huka, he hahu, te he moriora. Thank you very much. Right, do we have any apologies? It looks like we've got a full muster of elected members. We have a couple of folk crook. I understand Barbara is away today, crook. Andrea recognised that you're here but will disappear, which is absolutely fine. And Siobhan, who was going to be our star act under PX, is also crook. Look, while we're not necessarily sustaining apologies for staff, I just want to recognise at this stage that those folk aren't here, and or in the case of Andrea, leaving early. So that's just to be noted, and I appreciate the advice they give me that they're not able to be here. With Siobhan, as I noted to Siobhan, it was a bit, disappointing. It sounds like I'm now criticising them. Not. I had been hopeful, given I think it was going to be our last chance to see Siobhan, but we do have a very good Project Management Office paper coming up, which has been a matter that Siobhan has kept in front of us, so I'm very grateful for that. Are there any matters in the agenda that you need to note your interests for? There being none, can we just move then to the minutes, please, of our last meeting? About to say the 8th of May. Where's the 29th of May? Oh, that's this afternoon's meeting. Okay, the 8th of May. I'll move from the chair. We accept the minutes as being previously published on Diligent as true and correct. I have a seconder, please. Thank you, Rebecca. Any questions of accuracy or comment you need to make? No? Right. Thank you, Rebecca, for holding this. I know I've got to go to this. Can you please vote? Got tried to vote. Yeah. Now, sorry, Troy, did I put Liz is online, is she? Oh, and John. Oh, okay. Brilliant.
Yep.
How do they vote? In the chat. Oh, okay. Oh, right. Good. Thank you. Modern technology. Thank you for that, guys. Okay. Items not on the agenda. There are none. What I would note, though, is under public excluded, we have some additional items around insurance, which is tremendous. Public participation, haven't been informed of any, which then gets us straight into general business. And is it Jeffrey on the Project Management Office? Please, welcome to the table, Jeffrey. Good to have you here again, buddy.
Kia ora, hello, thanks for having me. So I'm just here to give a bit of an update around Project Management Office. There's a paper there and there's some slides which are attached that you may have already seen, but what I thought maybe I could do is just talk through those slides relatively quickly. I assume you've sort of read them, but I think it's still useful just to talk through them and just take questions as we go if you have any. Really, this is basically the point of this is the Project Management Office is really a key control for one of your strategic risks for the organisation around planning. So this is just a chance to talk you through what's there in place in terms of controls around projects and investments at council, and just give you an update of where that's at, an opportunity to ask some questions. So that's sort of the basis for why I'm here talking to you.
Brilliant, Jeffrey. Thank you.
So PMO, sort of in the council, we're an enterprise function. We sit in the infrastructure and delivery group under Siobhan, but we service the whole of the organisation in terms of these three things around overseeing the overall investment lifecycle and centralised reporting, project reporting. We provide advisory and assurance services to projects across council, and we facilitate the reporting that you all will see through quarterly reporting, and also the reporting to the executive team around how our significant projects are tracking. This is our investment delivery framework. So this is sort of a industry best practice, basically project lifecycle framework. It provides a view around how an idea, an issue moves through from conception, idea, option development, delivery, and then transfer back into the business. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this one, but it's the process by which all projects work through council. The key part of our investment delivery framework really, though, is that, but it's also around scalability. So the way in which council works is that we have internal classification of our projects, and projects are either classified as significant, moderate, or minor. This is based around their value and also the complexity of projects. So it's about putting the right level of controls and disciplines and rigour around different projects to the right level. So our overall framework is relatively generic, but we tailor it and scale it to the appropriate projects. And in terms of the PMO and where our focus lays is particularly around our significant projects. So you can see a couple of donut charts there if you can read in terms of they're a relatively small number of our projects, but they make up the vast majority of our capital spend in the project space. And so that's really where a lot of the spend is, a lot of the risk is, and a lot of the value in terms of the delivery of change into the city. And so that's where we are particularly focused in the PMO, is making sure those significant projects are up and running well, but having that oversight of other parts as well.
Can I just ask a question there, please, Jeff, if that's okay? Can you describe to me, so, I noted 20% of your projects are 80% of the value, so that must be where, logically, at least that sort of simple metrics, that's where the risk is. So how does the PMO itself relate to those projects? Do you run them, or are you providing advice, or
no.
you...
Yeah, so the PMO is, we provide that overall framework, so we're really providing advice, I guess. So for significant projects, we would be providing the advice around how those projects are set up, what the appropriate governance arrangements are, what the right level of rigour and process should be followed in terms of the project life cycle. We don't actually run those projects ourselves. The projects are run within the different parts of council. Typically, a lot of our significant projects, we get external expertise in terms of business case development or project delivery expertise. So the likes of the town hall, we have, I think it's RCP skill sets coming in. So we're really we're providing the reporting, we're tracking them, we're giving the executive team a view around how those projects are tracking, and particularly supporting the senior responsible owners for those projects to make sure they're well supported and have sort of a second pair of eyes.
Look, I get that. I was pretty certain my answer was you don't actually undertake the projects. What's the compulsion, either on you or on the project deliverers, to make use of your expertise?
Compulsion.
Yeah, you guys are the quality reservoir of the organisation. You make certain things go, you have that capacity. What makes, if I'm out there doing a project, you being that I've got to consult with you, I've got to get a sign-off from you, I guess I'm looking at the control, the system, the control that exists here.
There is no compulsion to use the PMO as a source of support or advice that we have. They're delivered within the different parts of the business. The controls really are around the reporting. So the centralised reporting system, we provide that reporting around the significant projects, which creates the visibility to the ELT and to council around how they're tracking and where the significant risks and issues are. The day-to-day engagement with the projects. That's not how the PMO is set up in terms of being a hands-on point of control. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Wendy? Yep, to your left.
Myself right here. Just a follow-on. Maybe you will be covering it later, but with your centralised reporting then, if you aren't close to the projects, how do you get confident about the quality of the reporting?
I mean, we work with the project managers. We understand what's going on. If there's issues with the reporting, we'll go and work with them. So there is day-to-day interactions, but in terms of, like I said, so for our significant projects, we get external expertise in around project management, around business case development, and so there's not a compulsion to use the PMO as that source of advice. We can get external assurance or external advice around those projects as well.
I'm conscious Iona's got a question. I just wonder though, do you have the right to inquire of
Yes.
project and its status?
Yes, definitely. And certainly if we see something that's an issue, that's a role for the PMO, and particularly around that advice to the senior responsible owners for those projects. So when we see an issue with a project, that is our role, is to go and have a conversation and support the SRO to make sure that they are aware of it and
Great.
can take
No,
action.
thank you.
Yeah.
Iona, sorry.
Thank you. That follows. That's helpful, actually. So I guess given, I think it's good to have a PMO, but given it costs ratepayers money, I guess I'm just curious where you think you're achieving success, and do you think this means having more rigour over the projects means that we don't get another town hall blowout, or we don't have any problematic property development, the housing that we try to do? Because at the end of the day, it's got to work, right?
Yep. So definitely, I think there's pretty well documented evidence around if you apply good practice project disciplines, good practice investment disciplines, then you deliver projects more successfully. A lot of what I'm quite interested in doing is making sure we do that initial planning up front quite well, and so plan slow, deliver fast, and avoidance of the rework and the issues that come from a back end project delivery with good upfront planning and good upfront decision making.
Measure in any way, I just can't remember all the KPIs, but how you measure your success?
Measure success of the PMO as a function. We don't have any. I'm trying to think if we have particular measures. It's not something we have at the moment. So we've project. There are metrics out there around project failure or rework. I don't think we have those in place at the moment. We need to probably get a body of evidence over time before we could start measuring that.
I'd like to make a comment.
Councillor, if maybe I can help.
Yeah.
It was actually early, about 5 years ago in this committee, that there was a request for us to have far greater robustness and support for our significant projects, which is why we have put all this work into establishing a well-running PMO. And the measures in the ELT view is having that visibility and to be able to catch things early, which is what was asked for by councillors through audit and risk, so that we don't have continuing massive issues and that transparency. So I don't think it's a measure in regards to the cost, or not cost, but into the direct input of PMO, but what the output is of having far greater and better run projects.
So given we've had a few problems in that since that 5 years, I guess we can maybe discuss it later because I know we're still doing the presentation, but maybe there needs to be even more rigour to make sure that the function is delivering. I'm not talking about any staff, I'm just talking about the function.
Thank you. So look, I've got Ray and then Tony, and then I think Andrea's got a comment she'd like to make as well. Ray?
Yep, great, thanks. I'm keen to understand, if we made that decision 5 years ago, it came through the audit and risk 5 years ago to say that.
Ray, so I'm just conscious, I want you to hold your question, because I think it's a good one, but I'd like to let Jeffrey have a chance to get through his presentation. Look, I did set us off with some questions, but hopefully I was addressing what was on the slide. Let's get through the slides first, then if there are the broader questions, as I think you're wanting to go,
Yep,
and
sure.
also Owner's taken us, let's have that debate after it. Tony, is there a question of clarification on you'll wait till later on? Andrea, any question from you? Thanks, Jeffrey. Let's keep going, man.
All right. So So this is just a list of, like I said, we're focused on significant projects. So this is just a list of where the current significant projects are that we have listed, and noting which part of our investment delivery life cycle they're currently at. So you're probably pretty familiar with all of those projects. So the most significant change, so we came and talked to you, I think, back in February 2023 was the last update to the Audit and Risk Committee. So the most significant change since then really is around our project reporting system, which is PIACA. So that is a centralised MS Project Online system where all projects, in terms of tracking risk registers, issue registers, costs, and status reporting is done centrally now through our projects. So what this has changed is a very distributed model of project reporting and information to a much more centralised model. It's the most significant sort of improvement that we've made over time, and that's allowed a much greater level of visibility of where projects are at, and like Meredith said, a much better level of visibility for the executive team and others around how projects are tracking, where the significant risks and issues are, and so that's really enabling an improvement there. And it supports elected member reporting. So we're currently working with our planning and reporting colleagues around getting quarterly reporting right for the new financial year coming up. The first quarterly report will be October, I suppose. So using the information out of PIACA and building that a good set of information for elected members around the significant projects, how they're tracking and what their statuses are. And that will go, and so that reporting goes through to our long-term plan, finance and performance committee as part of quarterly reporting.
Great, thank you.
So just in terms of areas of focus for the PMO over the next coming financial year, there's sort of 4 areas that we're focused on: governance, assurance, financial, project management capability, and reporting improvements. So the governance and assurance practices are really around it's focused on a significant project. So this is about making sure that those governance practices over those projects, those assurance that we have over the projects are good and strong. You get the right oversight and assurance over projects. You can cover all manner of sins in terms of other things that may be going on projects. You get that good oversight and you manage it well. So that's an area of focus. We want to make sure that our senior responsible owners for our projects have got good information, are well supported, and that those governance environments for those projects are operating effectively. So that's really a focus for us, and also around those assurance plans. So there's a whole body of assurance activity that happens across our projects, but we're very keen to make sure that that's clearly documented and understood for each of our significant projects. What are those assurance practices that are happening, and when and why are those happening, and are they appropriate? So we're keen to make sure that's good and strong.
Yes, Wendy.
It is just a clarification.
Yes, no, it's fine. No, I got that. I knew you would.
The slide. Just can you give me a flavour of the types of assurance activity that you've just said? There's a whole range of activity. Are there some sort of core planks to that assurance, like expectations that you have?
Yeah, so you would have general, project or program health checks in terms of is it well set up, and you typically do those around key decision points or some of those stages in their IDF. But the other assurance can be everything from engineering, second opinions around engineering assessments, around business case reviews in terms of the quality of the documentation and the financial models that sit behind business cases. Assurance, when I talk about this, therefore projects, it is the project assurance, but it's all the other second opinions and assurance that you might have around the individual elements of a business case development, costing, that sort of activity. Yeah.
Thank you.
So the other areas around the financial management, so we're quite keen to lean into this here. So like I said, we've got a new project reporting tool, so we're keen to make sure that there's really good connections between our financial Tech One reporting systems and our project management reporting systems, make sure that those work well together, and that we have good quality financial information available to our project governance and also to our project managers, that they're well supported, understanding where their budgets are at in terms of their projects, their forecasting is strong, and they're able to manage those budgets in a really good way. And also the other area around financial management is working to support that lift in quality around the financial analysis in our business cases. We want to make sure that there's good, clear expectations and practices around full financial information within our business cases. So the example there is making sure we don't just focus on the initial capital investment and affordability of that, but we look at the ongoing operating impacts of some of our capital works and make sure the financial impacts of those are understood as well. So it's an area of focus.
It was an area, as a sort of accountant these days, that interested me, Jeffrey. I take it that with the implementation of the software that you've got, the key thing is now is to ensure Tech One does talk effectively with the new system, as in contrast to putting it in place for the first time financial management control, because I'm assuming we've got it. This is about lifting, as I think you say, the quality of the actual integration and perhaps the regularity, speed with which information gets to our project managers?
Yes, that's right. So we have existing project managers have reporting around their financial and how they're tracking, and that's through the Tech One system. It's more around all our project reporting, and in terms of going to our boards and senior responsible owners is through our project reporting system. So we just want to make sure that that information is available at the same time and connected together. So when you're talking about risks, you have a risk conversation is connected to a financial conversation, is connected to your schedule, and all the different parts of those projects are connected together, because that's really that's the point and the strength of project management, when you create those connections across schedule, financials, risks, and it's coherent. And so that's the challenge, and that's probably what we're focusing on, is making sure that those good financial management information that's available is connected into the conversations around tracking and reporting of projects.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah. And then around project management capability, so I think, like I mentioned earlier, where our project managers are distributed across the business, so all parts of the business deliver projects. So what PMO is keen to do is make sure that there's a consistent and clearer understanding around what capabilities we need within our project managers across the organisation. So we're going to work with those practice leads out within the organisation who are managing those project managers to get an understanding around what are the different capabilities we need, and get some definition and understanding of what they are, things like scheduling and estimating, reporting, business case development, the different skill sets you need of project managers. We want to work with the different parts of the organisation to get a consistent understanding of them and to get sort of a shared plan around how we can lift the capability of those project managers across the organisation. And then the final area is around those reporting improvements. So we talked about Paiaka, but we sort of want to build that more. So we want to strengthen the quality of the project data that's in there. We've got a start in terms of what's into our reporting tool, but we need to continue, just keep building on that. So that's a lot of that is about having good quality reporting and insights out of that tool for our project governance and for the executive team and elected members, to drive some better disciplines around the quality and currency of the information that's in the system. It's quite strong for our significant projects in terms of the reporting cycle we have, but for some of the moderate and minor projects, we need to continue to keep those also engaged with the tool and lifting the data quality to enable those better strategic views at a portfolio or program level. And then I just had a couple of slides at the end giving you the Audit and Risk Committee around project assurance. I wanted to touch on what our project assurance framework looks like. So it's a 3 lines of defence model, which I think is relatively standard. So our project management and governance activities day to day are your first line of defence. The second line of defence are functions like the PMO that have that second opinion and support function for our projects to support them. Our finance, our legal team are other second lines of defence, and those third lines of defence are those external assessments that we get in, particularly for significant projects, the external second pairs of eyes to support our projects and make sure that we are set up for success. And really that project assurance is focused around supporting our SROs and our governance to make sure that they're set up for success. It needs to be, and it is sort of a constructive and critical friend to our projects to make sure they're forward-looking and set up for success. And also PMO has a role for that wider culture within the organisation around lessons learned and making sure we learn from how where we've done things really well and where we have done things not so well, and build that learning culture and counsel around our projects. And that's where I will leave you.
Brilliant. That's
Yeah.
great. Hey, thank you for that, Jeffrey. That is actually very informative. So, look, I had Ray, then Tony.
Great, thanks very much for all this. I guess what I'd like to know is that what's the difference between this using this PMO and what we've done previously? Because I see we use a lot of terminology like we're going to strengthen, we're going to lift, we're going to improve. But what I don't understand is that strengthen from what to where and lift from what to where. And so, obviously, in many cases, it doesn't help to go back over things that we've actually done because that was done under a different system. But I need to understand exactly what it is that, what were the deficiencies that we had before that we're actually covering with this now. Now, for example, we talk about the town hall. We knew in January of last year, the year before, can't even remember when it was now, January, that we knew there were problems with the town hall project, but we didn't actually get a briefing until October. So would the system actually help us through month by month?
Ray, sorry. I think we've thrashed the town hall. I'd like to keep it at the systems level that actually and this new system that in effect Jeffrey's talking about, rather than necessarily relitigating the town hall at this stage.
Well,
Sorry, Andrew, did you have
I think it's really important to remember roles and responsibilities here. So the responsibility for the town hall was not with the project management office. So these questions being directed to Jeffrey as the head of the project management office are not, directed at the right person. In terms of the town hall, as Jeffrey's explained, we have a project team, and the responsible people for that are the project team, including the senior responsible officer, which is the SRO who's responsible for leading that. Jeffrey's explained the role and the functions of the PMO, and they do play a role in supporting those teams, and he's highlighted where we're strengthening those and bringing lessons learnt, but he's not directly accountable for those town hall learnings or what was undertaken in the town hall. That's better directed to that project group.
But Ray, I like your question which was, what are the steps from here to where? Where are we heading for? Which I think is a really good question. Sorry, if I can be answered, I think is a good question in scope. And if you'd like to get the answer, I'd invite you to do that.
Yeah, so my issue isn't actually going back over the town hall and saying what went wrong over there. My issue is, or my concerns are, do we have all those things covered off? Does this new PMO, would that actually pick up all these issues that we should have picked up then? And so that's what I want to know. I want to understand that we would know everything, almost month by month on what's actually happening, on when anything goes wrong. Because when something happens early in the piece, we can do something about it. When it happens many, many months later, it's much more difficult to catch up on it and to actually rectify it. So that's my concern. Well, that's what I'd like to see.
So could I perhaps rephrase it? Have you taken learnings out of the town hall that now affect the PMO process?
I mean, I've been in the role since April, so I'm not completely familiar with the town hall, but certainly like the improvements that we're making around reporting and those sorts of things are lessons from the town hall. So it's about making sure that you've got good, clear understanding around where the risks and issues lie, and you've got good, clear understanding around escalation paths for when issues come up. And so that's about good reporting to project governance and also good reporting to the executive and elected members around where projects are at, what their statuses are, and clear and transparent reporting around risk. Those are exactly the practices that we're trying to, that we promote and get embedded within projects. So the work of the PMO is to support that clear understanding and transparent understanding of where projects are at, where there are issues, and get good, clear decision paths for those issues to be resolved. I don't think it's probably particularly what we've got in place now is significantly different to what was in place at the point of the town hall. The IDF was in place at that point in time. Project reporting, we've got better quality project reporting and more transparent project reporting through a centralised system now, and we'll continue to build on that. but it's an area of continuous focus and effort. It's not sort of a maturity improvement. It's about a culture and a continuous improvement activity around the rigors of project reporting and working. If that's helpful at all.
Yeah, that's good. Would it be a good idea for us to actually get more information rather than wait for the updates? When did you say the updates? Quarterly updates, were they?
So there's quarterly updates alongside the quarterly report around significant.
So would it be a good idea for us to say receive monthly reports on the monthly project reports, for example, on different things, and so that if we wanted to go over them, we could.
I wonder if we let Rebecca have a say. Look, I'm sorry, Tony, we'll get to you as well, but I think, Rebecca, you're the receiver of reports, so I wonder whether you have a comment.
I do, just in relation to, because I think what Ray's questions are getting at, and I don't think monthly reports is the answer, but I think what we are seeking to see is more transparency between when problems are identified in the project and when it comes to us in the reporting. And that's the kind of, and I guess, so we would have an extra kind of interest in the work that you're doing about the improved reporting to us, because that was kind of clearly where it didn't quite come through in the way that we would have anticipated. So I think that's the kind of the nub of the question for us, and to make sure when those issues are identified through the project reporting process, that they do filter through in a timely way to us.
Yeah, and I think, Jeffrey, on that, if I could lean in on that one, Rebecca, that's where your risk management processes, project by project, are really important. Time, cost, quality, that's a key thing around capital project. Those should be the what are the escalation points?
Yeah.
Is risk terminology what you want, which is, if there's an issue, let us know.
Yep.
Ray, hopefully it's helpful. Tony, do you have a question, please? You're being patient.
No, thank you. First of all, thank you for explaining some of the background in terms of the focus on getting consistent reporting as the key goal for the PMO, and I think you've explained that you're on track for that, and that's happening. So good on you. I've got a couple of questions. One is just in terms of explaining what's happening. What you've explained is fine, but I think it would be useful to have a couple of examples, because the reality is you guys are a wee bit like the Secret Service protecting the president. No one ever hears about the attempts of assassination that are avoided by your activities.
Right.
They only see the ones which succeed or come close to succeeding. So I guess it would just be useful, I think, maybe next time, to get a couple of examples, a couple of war stories of either a project that kicked off quickly but got on the right foot because they had a good framework, or a project that went off track but was caught by the process and remedial action was taken, because I think that's what you're doing. Yeah.
Well, ideally what we're doing also is that the PMO doesn't need to take action. It's a system and the controls which... It's the systems that we put in place that catch these things rather than us as individuals.
Sure.
Yeah, I take.
But I think by example, I think that's I find that sometimes easier to engage with than because the problem that you've got is that you're a risk management service, and seeing nothing happen is still not assurance that something's going wrong.
Could I perhaps give an example of some of the, given you're asking for an example, I sit on a number of governance groups for projects. Jeffrey and his team have been attending some of those groups and observing how those governance groups operate. And recently, I'm not going to name the project, he felt that what we were doing was not adequate enough to, as the project ramps up. So he has provided that feedback to the SRO in terms of what needs to change, in terms of that governance group operating and what needs to happen. And the SRO is now putting those things into place and into action. So it's that point, I think, Jeffrey, so as an ELT member, I take a great deal of comfort from that, that external lens in terms of improving that governance ability. And that's a live example that I've seen come in here as you've requested. But we can, I mean, Jeffrey will continue to bring in those examples, but from my perspective, it's that point that Jeffrey was raising to make sure that the PMO supports us to get the planning right in the first instance before it becomes too late. And that was the real value add to that project, because sometimes when you're sitting around the table, you keep doing what you've always been doing without that external focus.
Thank you, Andrea. That gives me some assurance of what really happens in things. And I guess I'm just looking forward towards the next quarterly report where we can get our teeth into the information that your service, I'll say, is having come through to us. So that's where the rubber hits the road, isn't it?
Yep, definitely. I will just, I guess, add as well that quarterly reporting, the reporting process is about how projects are tracking and status. If there are issues within projects, reporting is not the escalation path. Issues that don't need to wait for the end of a quarter to be addressed and taken to the right people to make a decision. If there's issues in projects, I would not rely on, and you should not rely on, reporting to be the place where you get those issues brought to you. And I guess that's the other thing that we'll work with to make sure that there's support those projects to understand when and how they need to escalate stuff through to the right people for decisions to be made or issues to be resolved and get a successful path forward. Reporting is one part of it, but it's not the only interaction you guys should have with projects at all. Yeah.
Thank you, Tony. Iona.
Sorry, I'd just like to go back to that issue that I raised before. Without sounding like my colleagues on the right, I'm getting a bit concerned about... Yeah, it is a political statement. My good friends on the right. Just given our rates, I'm just really very interested in how we spend our money, because we can't afford, to waste it. So I would, maybe it's to come back to, but I would like to measure the effectiveness of this, because obviously local government does big projects, right? And sometimes they go really well and sometimes they're a disaster. So just want to make sure we're getting this as good as we can. So I'm not sure what that would look like.
Look, can I just interject, because I think, Jeffrey, there are probably some PMOs around the country, and I will name a metro after the meeting to you, happy to, which does look to measure the effectiveness of its capital delivery program. Yeah. Things like efficiencies, things like value added or value saved. There may be some aspects around that would be useful, Iona, to consider as we Jeffrey goes about his business, which I can provide, but it would be for outside the meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, will that be done? What's the formal way to request that?
Well, I'd like to leave it that I think, although we've got another couple of people asking questions, I'd be very keen to invite Jeffrey back at a suitable time, probably in about 6 months. But we've got Rebecca's group doing the review of the actual projects, but I think the question you're asking, and all of us are interested in the system and the role of the PMO, which certainly personally I'm asserting in a very positive light, but I also agree with what you're saying. Value for money, I'm interested in it as a control. So given there's lots of good development that you want to get done, you've got four key pillars there. And it goes back to your question, Ray. I'd love to know progress. So I wonder if in 6 months we could perhaps consider that, Iona. I've got Wendy and then Geordie.
Great, thank you. You can take the level of interest, the importance of that, but also the quality of the presentation you've given us to engage with. There's probably 3 quick points, Bruce, with your indulgence. One, just to sort of build on endorsing the idea of what we just said, to come back in 6 months with a sort of a view of the project system effectiveness and then maybe the functional effectiveness or how that is. And in that regard, a question, but maybe not. You connected in with the central government PMOs and wider systems too, I assume, with looking at good practice. Is that not just local government? Is that?
Yes. Yes, so we connect in with good practice.
Yeah, because I think that to me is there's some pretty sort of well mature practice, not always going to guarantee success, but whether it's the Treasury's investment management system for central government, gateway reviews, the wakakotahi, and you know, there's a lot of good practice around like that. I'm sure you connected in with it. So, but just drawing on those to sort of see how can you measure would be one comment. Thanks for the example, Andrea, on the governance piece, because I did have a question about the key driver here, which I'm picking up from what you're saying here, is the quality of the reporting. And good expertise and culture. There's a sort of an expertise and attention piece, and then there's a how are we getting good culture at the governance level and the project level to drive that good quality reporting. So maybe it's for that follow-up session. I'd be interested in getting a view of how you are looking to build project governance expertise. Do you get external people in? You say training and other things, but just some of the tools to lift that would be really helpful. So there's I'll probably leave the third point.
By the way, I'm making some assumption here, Wendy, that PMOs just don't relate to capital build. They could also be significant maintenance contracts as well, I would presume. I have got Geordie and then Rebecca. Then we might have done a full round, I hope.
Yeah, I think a really good presentation and to see this work happening. And I guess my reflection on some of my work experience was around in leading projects and the delivery of projects, how much we focus on, I guess what I see as being two complementary things is the tools that we use, but also the culture that we enable, the culture that we lead within an organisation, and how that contributes, especially around, you know, the safety of raising issues, and those sorts of things. So I was wondering if, from the project management office, how closely are we working in with sort of developing that team culture or that organisational culture to be confident in bringing things up and reducing our risk that way?
Yep, 100%. Culture is massive for good quality. And I guess that was my point around assurance, is making sure it's a really constructive, forward-focused activity for projects. You need to look back, but you also need to look back in order to be successful going forward, and making sure they're constructive, making sure that reporting also is you've got really good transparent reporting, and that people aren't afraid of, you know, marking something as a red. Red is a good thing because it gets an issues fixed, rather than red is a bad thing because someone's going to come and hit you with a stick. It's an ongoing thing. I think it's part of how we have conversations in the organisation and how we raise things through. It's a lot of it's led from the top in terms of the leaders of the projects and the leaders of the organisation, and making sure that it's and they're on board with that quite clearly around having good culture around these projects, and a constructive, transparent culture around setting projects up for success. I can't really speak to specific cultural activity that the PMO is doing, but it's just an ongoing relationships that we build within the organisation. There's a big focus on relationship building and management with the PMO to make sure we're that, you know, critical friend rather than a policeman kind of culture for how we interact with the business. We're there to support people, and we've got, you know, shared interests with them around them being successful, rather than us trying to, you know, enforce standards or compliance. It's how we work, probably, as much as anything.
Yeah, cool.
Geordie, appreciate a very good question. Rachel.
Mine's not really a question, but I guess I just wanted to reflect. I think it's good that there is kind of robust questioning of this kind of reporting that comes to us, and that, you know, I believe that we all have an interest in kind of the, you know, both cost effectiveness and effectiveness of these kind of work. But I just was slightly uncomfortable with some of the language, and I just would like us to be a little bit more careful when we have team members come and speak with us of, you know, throwing out things like waste of money. And I think that is not... I would just ask all members of the committee to reflect a little bit about how they express those concerns, and, you know, so I'm happy to have a conversation later about that.
We're getting into debate, so
I don't think we... thank you for the reminder. I have monitored the conversation as we've gone on, and I'm comfortable, and it's my attempt to reinterpret a couple of questions to make certain that I think they are ones that are on topic. Jeffrey, thank you for that. I don't know what you expected this morning when you walked in the door, but I think what I would like to say is this is an area naturally for a council of high interest, and I'm very grateful for the transparency with which you've come to today's meeting and been open to questions. The problem with having a good presentation is that means we invite you to come back. So look, we do, and it would be good if we could schedule the idea of perhaps in 6 months. So firstly, an update against those 4 very meritorious steps you want to take. I have given Andrea the name of the council that does some work around marking, particularly around its CapEx, some economic values about what's been achieved that may or may not be relevant. So I pass it on for what it's worth. So thank you for being here and facing up to the questions. That's tremendous. We have a resolution in front of us, which is simply that we receive. I'll move from the chair that we receive Jeffrey's report. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Tony. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Do you want to make a debate about it?
Should we have a debate?
Do we need to? Okay, go for it. Go for it. Go for it.
So I just want to note that this council does do some very big projects, and this council has had some poor outcomes for some of the big projects. This is establishing a PMO is a really sound way that's used to get on top of that stuff, to provide transparency and early warnings of things going wrong, and I really want to support that. I've seen it in different shapes in different organisations. Some have much stronger assurance capabilities where they actively check, but I think our focus has been more to get the transparency to the senior officers early and often. Also, this is a maturity thing, and it's trying to be established, and I support and trust the officers to build in these controls, and it's very difficult though to justify the value of them, because really we're avoiding risks, we're avoiding big cost blowouts. I do encourage them, even if it's offline, to just inform some councillors of the war stories. There's probably some things that have actually gone wrong internally but been remedied, and insofar as you've avoided a headline in the Post, it's still a success. However, I also think that, having a council that's run by sound practice is the best way and the most likely way where we're going to give value for money for all our big investments. So I'd just like to thank the team for keeping on going, and I understand it's a maturity thing that we're still going on. If bad things keep happening, then maybe it's not working and we have to relook at this, but I haven't quite seen that yet.
Thanks, Tony. Any other comments? Geordie?
Yeah, I was just going to, make a comment around particularly, some of the questions that were made earlier were sort of, looking into the value that the product management office can provide. And, my reflection from being in organisations that I've seen having both very mature and very immature product management, practices, I can really see the value of this in the organisation. But I guess during that moment I was also reflecting on we've set up a group to drive efficiencies and manage risk, and we could set up a group to measure how much it costs to save those costs. But I think, at what point do you stop? At what point was it cost effective to measure the cost effectiveness of a business that was managing cost effectiveness? So it does become a bit recursive, I really appreciate the staff coming here, and I guess following my line of questioning, also reflecting on the importance of culture in those things. In my experience, seen that culture has driven it more than tools. Sometimes, tools can support work programs, but culture is really what drives that safety and ability to do things, where most of our work is actually having a face-to-face conversation rather than interacting with a tool. I'm really glad to see some of this work happening, and the acknowledgement of the fact that culture plays a part in it.
Thanks, Geordie. Any other comments you'd like to make? Yes, Iona.
Thanks. Look, I think this has been a useful conversation, and I do think it is excellent to have a project management office, but we do need robust questioning, because we are talking about many, many millions of dollars at stake. And while I take your point, Councillor Rogers, about culture, I just think it also needs to be very transparent to the public what sort of value is being got out of any council exercise. That includes our work at a governance level as well. So I look forward to the report back and the reflection on just how we can show that we're getting value for money out of everything we're doing. That'd be good.
Thank you, Anna. Any other comments? Can I suggest we take our vote? That's to receive the report, again with many thanks to Jeffrey. I'd ask you to vote, please. There we are. Here we go. It's carried. Thank you very much. Could we move to item 2.2, the risk management update? And Rachel, I think. Now, Rachel, I think maybe, I hate to say it, a new face to me. There's a risk that I've been introduced to you before, Rachel, so my apologies if I have. But Richard, if you could start and introduce, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my start is to introduce Rachel and not to steal her thunder. So Rachel joined the council early June this year. She's got a background in operations manager in banking, Singapore, UK, for a long time overseas, but most recently working in local government branch water services reform at DIA, so connected with our business. Since joining council, she's made great progress in. There'd been a pause in risk management activity since our previous principal departed late last year. Rachel's made great progress connecting our risk champions back together across council, being a thought leadership on strategic and operational risk across council, and making our documentation more accessible. So, really pleased with the first 2 months. Hopefully you'll enjoy her paper. Over to you.
Well, welcome to the meeting, Rachel. You're one of the key people for our group, so I'm very grateful to that you're here, and well, thank you for taking the job, and look forward to your paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Tēnā koutou, ko Rachel Frere koutou inua. I'd like to take this paper as read, the main purpose of which is to share my work plan, and I just have a few items to update you on verbally as well. If you could refer to page 31, which is the next actions. I just wanted to add to this is prior to distributing the slides for the workshop, we will be sending out a survey to you all, which is elected members, mana whenua representatives and external appointees. And this will just have 2 questions that we'd like to get everybody's input before we finalise those slides and distribute them, if that's okay.
Just add to that, the 2 questions will inform the workshop, the 28th of August, and they're very simple. What do you think are the top 3 threats facing the council, and what are the top 3 opportunities? So you can start planning for that one now.
Thank you, and a good reminder. The 28th of August, Richard, is a date. He's scurrying to his diary. Thank you. That's brilliant. Yes, Rachel, keep going, please.
Yes, and as previously discussed at other council meetings, at committee meetings, sorry, the strategic risks are due to be reviewed this month. And that was due to looking at aligning with the LTP outcomes and priorities and strategies. So that's why I haven't included an update on the strategic risks, because they are under review this month. And I was just wondering if there was any questions.
Brilliant. So this is a chance, you're saying that subject to these questions, this work plan is yet to be finalised, correct? Or have I got that wrong?
The work plan is the high-level work plan.
Yeah.
There will be a detailed version that I'll be working to myself. This is just to give you an outline of what my intentions are for the next year.
Brilliant. Okay. Questions? Yes, Iona.
First of all, welcome to council. And actually, the first question is actually for maybe a or team member. Look, so we've only got 1 employee in the team. Is that enough?
I can probably take that. I think, risk management doesn't sit with the risk manager alone. This is an organisational-wide responsibility. what we are fortunate to have is someone of Rachel's experience to actually coordinate the activities and think about what that looks like across the organisation as a whole, and particularly supporting ELT and our wider leadership group to think about these things as well. Equally, depending on the plan itself, we will always continue to monitor the resources that we have in this space and whether or not we need to increase those or, at any point in time, depending on the program that the Audit and Risk Committee wants to pursue.
Okay. You will soon get to know that my chief concern in the world is climate change and ecological destruction. And when I see these sorts of reports, and obviously there's a particular jargon, in the area that you work in, what I struggle with is understanding how big, serious risks fit and whether they're being given enough weight by the organisation as a whole, because it looks like we're just sort of sometimes managing little risks. I mean, obviously there's other things like earthquakes. I did put a question to Mr. Roberts about, what happened a few weeks ago with CrowdStrike, whether that could happen here, and all that. I mean, there's big things as well as smaller things, and so just be curious to hear what your thinking is around whether these frameworks can actually adequately prepare us for some of these big challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. As part of my role, I would also be scanning, of course, for external threats. I refer to World Economic Forum, the annual report on emerging threats, and of course, climate action, but is required and resilience is required. But they also help us and help me to think about how everything's connected, because you've got, societal polarisation, which is linked to misinformation, which is linked to, involuntary migration, which is also linked to climate change. So everything is linked, and everything has a cause and effect. And helping the organisation connect those dots to what are our strategies, what are we trying to achieve, and what is their role as a team, as an individual, as a business unit. So that's my vision for helping not just yourselves to connect how your vision and what the organisation does enterprise-wide, but at an individual business unit as well, how we can all contribute to managing the risks and feeling like we have a part to play in managing those.
Can I just add to that, that we're constantly updating our framework, and the discussion around the risks is more important than what makes it onto the paper. And I think our framework discussion in 2 weeks' time will look at risks through a different lens in terms of the LTP, the accessibility of the information, and as Rachel says, the interlinkage between those risks. And we're expressing some of those as uncertainties rather than risk. So.
I guess, and just my other concern is that just really that we're scaling up enough to meet those challenges which we know are coming, or like big earthquakes and all that sort of stuff. So yes, I appreciate that the organisation understands that. It's just, whether we've got enough of a response in place. Okay.
Absolutely, and as part of the work plan, having a system-based solution so that I can scan and understand what is our actual exposure to risk and how we're managing it and how effective are our controls, because this all comes into play at the moment. The maturity level needs to rise, and having system-based solutions where I can ensure that we are identifying those risks, that we are recording issues, and that therefore where we have hotspots, we can see that is a big area of an emerging risk, and what are we going to do about preventing big hotspots from occurring, and where we have less resilience as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Iona. Any other questions for speakers? Yes, sorry, Geordie?
Yeah, I guess you mentioned us thinking about, the biggest risks for the workshop, and through you, Chair, this might be better to be asked another time, but I guess I was thinking about, how much of our focus should be on externalities versus internalities, how much should be around, should we be weighting some of those risks in terms of how much control we feel we have over mitigating those things, what you might like to see there?
Absolutely, and this links back to a lot of the visions. They're not always within our control. They're within our influence. So this is, weighting those and how effective we are, or how much. And I believe this all in the LTP of what is our role. Is it partnership? Is it financial, etc., etc. So this should all come into play when we're looking at our risks as well.
Cool.
Rachel, just a couple of comments from me. One is, look, it's great to have a fresh pair of eyes. As Richard, you've quite rightly said, we're 6 months or so down since we've had the position filled, and not unnaturally there is a bit of a transition, and so I like broadly what you're doing here. Just a word of advice: let's beg, borrow, and steal off any council that's worth its salt to free you up to do risk work. Is what I'm trying to say. So, for instance, if we're going to do a maturity review, who's doing that? Do we have the funding to have somebody external do that, Richard?
I believe the maturity said so, Richard, sorry. I believe the maturity review last time was coordinated by the risk manager and the risk principal, and all the across the enterprise. We had responses, so it is really about a gathering information exercise.
Okay, look, I'll take your advice on what is the most effective way through that. I'm just, I at the risk of sounding a bit crass, beg, borrow, steal, this isn't the first time round, either for councils or indeed for us at Wellington. So I'm just keen that this truck on. One other comment is, can I give you a 7.2? Your 7.1 is risk champions. My 7.2 is really based on my view, risk management is just good management. And there's a sense to which I would be interested in the currency, and I suppose it will come out through the maturity review of our risk management framework, but the role of ELT. They're our primary internal risk champions. Now, I'm probably mincing two words together, but in the sense of using the word champion, but I would just be interested, not because I have any particular concern, by the way, about ELT, but I'm just thinking in terms of your program, we have to set the tone, they have to set the tone. We're doing a little review behind the scenes of our effectiveness. I'd be keen to see that we think about actually how the ELT, to overuse the word championing the management of risk as also the primary risk owners. Yes, Wendy.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't have a question, but following on the back of yours. Probably it's in that space of how you're looking to measure sort of risk maturity, and the GMF tool, which there's a question, has it been used before to assess maturity here?
Twice before, yes. Right. The last time was 2022.
Right, yeah. No, it's good if you've got some data points there, but I've had mixed, both as a user of it, in terms of helping organisations and receiving the information as governance. It's sort of whether it gives you the insight around where you actually need to drive to get the best effect. So, but if it's been used before, and I guess I would just endorse Bruce's point about thinking about how can you sort of do it to the extent and have that external test and challenge in it to give you the sense of how well are we doing risk management here, but the same freeing you up to really sort of get in there and do what we were listening to the project management office doing, which is getting out there and talking and helping with the organisation do this better. Yep.
Yes, absolutely agree. And I have used the tool before, and it identified a system-based solution, and that's why I don't want to be biased before we have the review, but I've seen, just based on where I'm reviewing, where the need is and what I believe the tool will tell us that the need is, because I don't think it has changed since the last review. So that's why I had proposed looking at system-based solutions, but you know, as Iona's point, Councillor Pannett's point, the solution, I think it needs to be cost effective and or either no cost or very minimal.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments for Rachel or Richard? Could I get us to look at the motion, please, which is that we receive the report and we approve the risk management work plan. Rachel, I won't, I mean, you've received some comments which may or may not influence some of the wording inside it. Perhaps it's more just approach and how we get you out doing the good work, recognising there's only one of you, as Iona has quite rightly pointed out, which I take on board. Do I have a person prepared to move and second the motion, please? Thank you, Iona. Thank you, Wendy. Is there any discussion on the motion? There being none, can we please take our remotes and vote, please? By the way, I propose to take a break at 11 o'clock on the view that we should be trying to finish I won't say it because if that's the case, we'll go past it. Assurance and business integrity update is John. Richard, you're back as well. John, welcome to the meeting. Good to see you, buddy.
Hello again. Just introducing John, but I just wanted to point out, on the back of Jeffrey's presentation on PMO, I wanted to point out something that's in our work plan for this year, just something that you approved. The internal audit will be doing a review of the project reporting process and governing structures and reporting, so maybe when Jeffrey reports back, we can align our presentation.
Brilliant.
So you'll have two perspectives.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So over to John, who's going to talk about the annual controls assessment and progress against this year's work plan.
Thanks, John.
Just to comment on Richard's remarks, I've been working on the scope for that this morning. The annual controls assessment, it's a piece of work we do each year to comment on the overall effectiveness of Council's internal control against the 5 elements of control that COSO specify. I think the paper speaks for itself. I think there's one comment I need to add, which is there's been a slight delay in the issuing of the commercial leases report. There's been some other priorities which have gotten in the way, but we are anticipating releasing that this week.
Thank you, John. Questions? We've got a very interesting report about the overall control environment. We've got a couple of questions on, but folk, do we have anybody else before I go? Any questions? Well, it looks like it's me, John. There we go. Can we just go to the spider diagram? I don't know what it's called, whatever the diagram is on page 42. What do you call those diagrams? Spider diagram? Okay, cool. So look, it's good that we are doing a consistent measure and having a chance to look at what moves which way, hopefully out, as I understand it. Can you just explain for me what, it would look like there are some gains. We have an assurance and monitoring process in place. We've stayed the same. What would move that out?
I think the main objective we're looking to see there is for departments to start monitoring their own effectiveness of their own processes. So within their own processes, they will define how they will monitor and report their own success or otherwise, and then feed that into us, so that we then get that information for the assurance mapping.
Okay, I just wonder if you could reinterpret that. What would that look like if I was a manager of an activity out there, say the library? I'm just picking on something. Think quickly about what a local government does, building a road, something. What does that really mean?
I think it would look something along the lines of, say, I think I'm going to pick a non-relevant example because we know that this issue has been solved. But say, for example, manager of a library would expect to see something around end of the day cash reconciliations, and then in turn what an acceptable variance was in terms of cash balances, and then following on from there, something which would then escalate up to either this is a deviation that's worthy of reporting, or whether this is something which is consolidated and kept as an early warning indicator.
So there's a level of going back to your point, there's a level of self-assessment and essentially, rather than reliance on just you, if I can put it that way, there is an approach to evidence of controls,
Correct.
and procedures around controls within the relevant activities within council. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, one other action that's pointed out on page 45, where we have next steps, is to improve our tracking and monitoring of open audit actions. So it says implement Power BI tracking, so that it's more accessible.
Yeah, so so it's about implementing the tool that will enable that sort of approach. Could I just check? Sorry, Rebecca, I'm conscious you've got one question. This is my last question. If I go to the control environment on page 43, which is demonstrated commitment to integrity, etc., the comments, I just want to check. I mean, it's important to me, tone at the top and all that sort of stuff. It seemed limited to the code of conduct. Is that, am I misreading it? What is it? If I looked at the comments on the right-hand side, we seem limited to what is an important but narrow piece of our total governance and tone. Can you just clarify that for me, please? Can you expand on it, perhaps more to the point?
1 moment, Chair.
So look at the comment on the right-hand side.
I can just, before John gets to his point, the code of conduct is one piece, but it's a key piece going forward. The need to update and reinterpret and republicise our code of conduct. And the integrity framework is the other key component that we've listed there as an action outstanding. So we've talked about the integrity framework from the OAG. The OAG has briefed us. It's putting that into action over the next year.
Brilliant. No, thank you for that, Richard.
Yeah.
Rebecca.
Yeah, my question was about, and I'm sorry, I don't have my papers in front of me, but the protected disclosure, because that's something, maybe because I haven't been on this committee, that's not a process that I'm familiar with. So I'm wondering if I could just get a brief explainer about what happens and if this is something that has come up from time to time for council, because as I say, I haven't encountered it in my time as a councillor.
Talk to the process as a whole, council, or the individual protected disclosure? Yep. So it's also known more as whistleblowing. So they can be whistleblowers inside or outside of the council. We receive them rarely, I think would be the case point. We are obliged to report to Audit New Zealand as a statistical monitoring, both or to notify them and also to update when they come out. We also speak to the chair, sometimes as a sounding board. And then we report to this committee as a whole without necessarily giving the detail of individual cases. The one that we are reporting here was an external, possibly a supplier, somebody who'd worked with the council before, who had concerns about a current supplier to the council. We looked at it and couldn't substantiate any of the concerns that were raised.
That's helpful, thank you.
Rebecca, for transparency, Richard did consult with me. I mean, as chair, I should be aware of any protected disclosure, but in this case, protected disclosures come in very odd ways, if I can put it that way. Yeah. So there was a level of advice and clarity to deal with it, and it was. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
So I was aware. Obviously, confidentiality is the issue around this. We've got to protect the people that make the disclosure, and it was great that the findings were all tickety-boo. Iona.
Sorry, just a question of clarification. In terms of transparency, so if we do have a complaint from a member of the public or a staff member and it's found that nothing is remiss, which of course is what the outcome we want, but how do we know? Because, who's checking the work has been done? Apart from Bruce, it goes through to Bruce.
I'm part of your system, Iona. Do you have a comment on that?
So it's not a critical question. It's just a curious at a system level.
We have established policy for responding to allegations, and we'll work. I think the policy comes through to this committee and has been approved at this level. I believe so. We follow that policy. The Audit New Zealand will sometimes question, how did we come to this conclusion? So there's channels there. The confidentiality is important in terms of the confidentiality of the disclosure and the nature of it. and that's to prevent any sort of recrimination against the person that's made the disclosure. So, but I wonder if there is a better way so that you can have more confidence in the process. But perhaps
It's not
Chair.
about more confidence, but just given it's sort of, you have to maintain the confidentiality, then, but how do you also check that it's going well? It's like the Police Complaints Authority, right? Who's checking them when they're checking the police? Yeah. Thank you.
Let's think on that one. I will assert again, Iona, that in my role I was comfortable with the process, and I'm comfortable with the work that was undertaken to get to the bottom of the matter, and I'm also comfortable that the confidentiality of the person who's a potential supplier has been protected in a way that shows that I think the council has approached it with integrity, which I think is important.
Yep. Okay.
Any other questions for John or Richard over their report? John, just actually I had one other question, which, I mean, it goes without saying, although I can sometimes know that there can be challenges. I take it all our recommendations on the various reports have been accepted by the management team, relevant management team.
Yes.
Brilliant. That's what I need to hear. Thank you. Any other questions folk would like to raise about our internal audit update? No. Can we go to the recommendation then, please? And I'm going back into risk management, sorry. Which I think is actually, it's multi-pronged, isn't it, John? So let's just take that slowly. So it's to note the confirmation of audit independence. We haven't discussed that. Perhaps it's worthwhile pausing just to tell me why we're doing that. You stated in the paper, but I think it's important. We haven't discussed it. I think it should be out in the open, please.
So following the resolution to adopt the global internal audit standards at the May meeting, one of the requirements of those standards is that the committee receive a confirmation of independence of the function, that we haven't had kind of undue management pressure to close findings early, not to raise issues, or otherwise kind of close field work early.
Rightio, thank you. We note the uploads and controls, which is the good centrepiece of your report. We received the update on the integrity work plan, and you've given lots of results there, and we received the update on the protected disclosure. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please, for that? Thank you, Rebecca. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Ray. Any discussion on the motion or motions? There being none, can you take your remote, please, and vote, please? That'd be great. Tempted to make some assumption that we're all voting, but I should check behind me, shouldn't I, before we do that? Okay, the annual report. That's brilliant. If we could deal with that, please, that would be great. Now, I'm not quite certain who all comes up. We've got about 105 names on this one, which reflects the size of the project. But I think Amy and Karina, how are you guys? Sorry, having 105 people on an annual report is not a criticism. That's actually good.
Probably slow. It's probably
This
small,
is the
right?
exciting part of the day. Go for it, you guys.
Right, kia ora koutou. I'll take the paper as read, but I'll highlight several key points. So overall progress on the preparation of the annual report, which covers both Volume 1 and Volume 2, is progressing as planned, and we're still on track for an adoption date of 31 October. We're still in the early stages of the overall process, but we're very well advanced in the preparation of the annual report. Just as a quick recap, Volume 1 is the overview of the year and the statements of service performance. Volume 2 is the financial statements. The full timetable to adoption has been outlined in the paper. We've built in sufficient time this year to allow you guys as a committee to receive the draft annual report and audit opinion in a timely manner to be able to thoroughly consider them prior to the October meeting where you will need to make a recommendation to adopt. And we've also scheduled the workshop to be in September, and this is again to allow time for you to provide feedback, but us to actually action and actually really consider your feedback and put it through the documents if needed. There's been good pre-audit engagement and planning with Audit New Zealand. We've received the information requests and we've already provided a significant amount of that information to them. The on-site audit is commencing on Monday next week, and we understand the audit has been sufficiently resourced on their side and appropriate priority is being placed on the audit of the asset revaluations, which is being brought to the start of the audit this year. In terms of Volume 2, the financial statements, we've completed the revaluations of the investment properties, which we do annually, and we have revalued our below-ground 3 water infrastructure assets and completed a fair value assessment of our other infrastructure assets, with roading being the main class. As highlighted in the paper, we're still completing the audit for the above-ground free water assets, which are namely pump and pump stations. This is actually just it's a small percentage of actually the overall free water class. It's less than 5% of it. We're using WSP, and the audit's currently underway with them completing site visits in conjunction with Wellington Water. We're managing this quite tightly because we understand it is going to be quite close to some of the timelines we need, and we are having weekly meetings with both Wellington Water and WSP in a joined-up meeting to manage this and make sure all information they need can be provided in a timely way. We've engaged with Audit New Zealand, so they are across this as well, and as that progresses, we will keep Audit New Zealand well updated and bring them into any meetings with WSP as needed. So overall, even though that's ongoing, we do believe that's manageable and it shouldn't impact the final audit opinion, the timing of that. So all other aspects of the financial statements is progressing well. I'll just pass on to Amy to see if she's got any comments to highlight on Volume 1.
Thanks, Karina.
Yeah, I've got one. Here-turi-kōkā. I just have some updates to page 57 of your agenda. So just because things have moved in the week since we put the papers out, so to sort of give you an update on where we are at currently in terms of the performance, the non-financial performance. Point 25 stated that we have 81 of our 93 KPIs result. We now have all 93, and that has just adjusted the actual performance to 62% met, so 1% higher than last year, and then 38% not met. So it's still that sort of solid result, and we have had some sort of that performance shift that's in the table is relatively the same. So we now have 40 KPIs that haven't had an improved performance, but we also have 27 that have had a reduced performance, so with no change in 24. And the other sort of met, not met statuses is relatively the same, just up and down 1 or 2. So a pretty good, pretty solid performance considering everything that's been happening in the city. It's pretty consistent with the last few years and pretty consistent with the KPIs over this LTP. So as mentioned, the KPIs and the Volume 1 will not just look at the annual reporting, but will also look at the progress and the reporting over the life of the LTP. It's important to remember this is a report against the 2021 LTP. So some of the stuff that you have been talking about for the last 6 months won't be in this report because that's the 24 LTP's only been going for a month. So it's kind of having to go cast your mind back and think back to that previous 2021 LTP. That's what we're closing out the performance of, and they're closing out the story of that 21 LTP in this report. So it's kind of a weird last look back in some ways when we've had that intense focus on the 24 LTP. So yeah, I guess the only one we mentioned that we were expecting the 12 KPIs that are outstanding to all be met. However, the one from Wellington Water actually didn't meet the target, and that was around the real water loss, essentially due to the leaks.
Thank you, Amy. I did pick up the reporting across the 3 years against the LTP and the pro forma, and congratulations. We possibly have done that before, and it shows you that perhaps I look at something sometimes with fresh eyes, but congratulations. I think that's a really superb initiative in the way you got into pro forma, so well done. Folk, do we have questions? Yes, Iona.
I think you said pretty solid results. So that's good. It's better than terrible. I was just wondering if that's kind of reasonably consistent across the sector, that people are struggling to meet them.
A lot of the ones that we do have some that have not met across the 3 years. And for varying reasons. Some of those have been reviewed in the long-term plan to actually look at why and whether there was needing to be changes in targets, or we were measuring the right things. There were some things there, so that comes part of the KPI review. So the KPI tables will say whether that KPI will be continuing or whether there'll be changes in how that KPI is being measured. As you'll see in the pro forma, we're going to be stating that some of these have been not met for 3 years, but some have had an improved performance over those 3 years. So some of those, for example, are response times in Wellington Water. They haven't met for 3 years, but some of those have had increased, have increased their percentage towards met. That percentage got away from me, sorry. But and one example of that is in 2.4 for the resolution of wastewater overflow jobs. The attendance time to get to those jobs is still quite low. It's not met that KPI, and it's consistently not met that over the 3 years. However, this year, for the first time, they've actually met the resolution of those jobs. So they're still struggling to necessarily get the resource to the job in a timely manner, but however, when they're there, they've got the money and they've got the resourcing to fix that job in a timely fashion. So that's kind of where the improvements are.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Any other questions or comments for Karina or Amy? Yes, Wendy.
Yeah, sorry, I've always struggled with getting this in time. But yeah, look, I focused on the words pretty solid result too, and thanks for your explanation, because I presume there's a granularity here going actually solid result, and some of the language you're using on COVID-related issues and supply chains felt a little bit dated. So are we talking really there about the inflation and the economy weakening and the effects on us? So some of that, I think, I know it's quite hard to get a headline performance, but to me, some of that, now that you have the full lot, look forward to seeing what you get in the annual report as being, this is a fair assessment of how we think about the council's performance.
And it's kind of, some of them will have different aspects in different 6 months of the year. So some of them, the inflation and that cost and the pressures in the supply chain impacted at different times. Some have had a different thing. So it kind of comes down to, there is some of the granularity of the nuance of each kind of KPI performance. But overall, I think some of the ones that were impacted by COVID have just remained impacted by COVID.
Right.
So some of the ones that we set them in 2021 when we still had COVID around, so it was, there's some of that granularity in there as well, is that potentially some of the targets were maybe not, or we were measuring the wrong thing, or we've had a re-look at that through the 24 LTP to reevaluate what we should be looking at and how.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. Tim.
I've got a very specific request. Could you not include that the council has provided me with a car park in this year's annual report? Because I see that there's about a $5,000 of expenses against my name in the last annual report, which is, I presume, mostly for car parking and cell phones and other computer equipment. I don't use a council cell phone. I don't use council computers. I don't use a council car park. I don't want that in this year's annual report, and because it was an error in last year's, and please don't make that same mistake again.
Well, we have looked into this earlier. Now, I guess the way we're displaying this table is showing the maximum entitlements that councillors are allowed, but we're going to make it a lot clearer now that that doesn't mean they took up these optional entitlements. It's just what we have allowed for.
I would say that is completely wrong. Completely wrong. I mean, if you look at other annual reports which show what directors' fees are, they show what directors are paid. Now, we're analogous to a director. I think we should be shown what we are paid and what benefits we've actually drawn from the company, not our entitlement to benefits. So, because I actually really resent that actually being in the annual report.
Thank you. I think that's something for to take. I think I'm hearing Rebecca's speech about respect. Karina, if you could, you've heard the strength of feeling over that. If we could just recheck, that would be useful, or if we could indicate to actually all councillors what are the obligations for council to report on, that would be helpful. Thank you. Tony.
Yeah, I was essentially going to say the same thing, but as a question to you, and that is, Is it possible under the regime to consider adjusting the reporting of members' entitlements on an actual used basis rather than an entitlement basis, or is that required to be reported this way?
We'll take that away and just double check what is the actual requirement in the standard and whether that is optional or not, and then come back to you on that and probably the workshop and where we land.
All councillors, it's obviously a matter of interest, Karina, so thank you for that. Iona.
Yes, in more moderate language, yeah, I do find that difficult too because I have never used a car park and I think it's quite problematic at a policy level. So if that's just in support, if it could be, whether it's possible to go to each councillor and just ask if they're actually using it, or maybe you've got records, but I would like that because it's quite a lot of money now. It used to be $3,000, now it's $5,000. And Andrea, I presume we can't get that taken away from us, like the REM Authority has given it to us, so we can't refuse it.
Look, we'll look into this. I think we also need to be as pragmatic as we possibly can in terms of creating systems and processes to record usage and, you know, the time it would take for my staff to actually do that as well, you know, to get these clear. I accept the points that you're raising and we will certainly look at, and I think your idea of a declaration or something like that is possibly a good one. We will follow up the requirements and the reporting rules, and we will highlight that in the workshop when we come back to you.
Okay, I take the point that I don't want to waste your time either, you're busy, but I do think it is an important point of principle that some people aren't taking that resource from. Yeah.
Thank you. Tony?
Yeah, just to follow up on that too, because this is a confusing element, because of course the use of a car park is partially dependent on the location of the residence of the councillor, and that in practice, you know, it's a big city and many councillors live such a distance away that a car park is really mandatory, so the use of a car park is not necessarily an optional thing. So I just ask for your advice to take on board and get the balance right for that. Thanks.
Thank you. I've got 4 questions, Amy, just to try and conclude, if that's okay. The paper says a workshop in the week of the 10th. Do we actually have a date? If you could email that, please, that would be great. Unless I'm missing something from my calendar, that would be good. I noticed there's and we'll have a chance to talk with Laura and Karen later, but in effect, you're signalling we're going to be qualified on 2 issues, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, then there's no way around this at this stage. We just have to accept that's the position we're in.
We're in that's the start. That's our kind of starting. We're not expecting more.
No.
We are hoping for less. It is unlikely there will be any movement on the Three Waters complaints. That is something we've signalled that needs an overhaul and an investment that is unwise in the reform position that we're in. We know there's going to be a reform of some shape. We've had some movement on that from central government, and so investing in all sorts of new systems and all sorts of new processes in terms of the complaints situation is not looked at by either company at the moment. So complaints will just sort of continue to be qualified at this point. And in terms of greenhouse gas, the team have been working on a lot on that. They have looked at methodology, they have looked at calculations, things to try and clear that. It is something that the greenhouse gas team are working towards, but we just, at this stage, we would flag that is the potential, but we are hoping that we can work through some of that and just see where we land in 6 weeks.
So that, and clearly that would be around, is it Scope 3?
Scope 3, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I can understand that. Just to clarify for me, I just went through all the valuations and some of the provisions you've got there, which is fine in the following sections, paragraph 33. So if I just check, you fair valued roads, and you said it was above materiality, so you're going to use the index method to adjust our values, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, with a subsequent full revaluation, right here. I was a wee bit perplexed that above ground assets were difficult to value. It tends to be underground assets, but anyway, there we go. Can I just say with the pro forma, again, I just want to reflect, I thought it was good. I take it what you've given us here in forms, I think, as a governance, is the framework for the way in which you're going to report activities for all the other activities, correct?
Correct.
Brilliant. I like it. I think it's superb. This last thing is, hear the passion in your voice about this, Amy. We're going to submit this to the Australasian Awards again this year?
Yes, yeah. So we're now 3 golds out of 3 years. So yes, we're hoping to continue on the same trajectory. Would be great.
Brilliant. Okay, I like that. That's good. Folk, any other questions? Final chance? Your vote is between me and morning tea. Wendy. How's that for a bit of rivalry?
Sorry for everybody. But no, look, maybe this is, I was going to just pass it on as a separate comment, but that pro forma, I do like how it looks. I still think there's room for even tighter language, and I'm happy to provide any feedback for you to consider. And that just because I think there is, and I was looking particularly at the page of governance activities where there's a lot of text, which can be quite simply bullet pointed to say we did this, we did that. So once again, it would be just feedback and the idea of continuous improvement that you're clearly seeking.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, please. Yeah. We have unfortunately with governance, we have a slight tension and it's really small compared to some of our other things. We do also have a tension with not trying to make governance look tiny compared to the environment, which will be huge, or social and recreation, which is massive. So there's a bit of a balance there, but please, I'd love some feedback,
I noticed, I think, what did I say, that part of the competition is to have a greater amount of white space. I can't help but tell you an old war story at morning tea time when we got accused in the office of using too much white space by local government. But
there's a balance.
If anybody knows the name Reg Denny, it goes back to a mayor of Oamaru many years ago. Rightio, let's see if we can look to the resolution, please, which is that we receive and we note the annual report timetable. And with that, we'll always have it confirmed with Karen and Laura. Thank you for your ongoing works with Audit New Zealand as well to get this across the line in its completed state by October. I appreciate that. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Tony. Is there any debate? Being none, can you take your remotes, please? And we will vote, please. Right, could I suggest we take a 10-minute... Oh, John and Liz, they still there? Cracker. Votes carried. Can I suggest that we take 10 minutes to be back at 15:15, please, for a cup of tea, stretch legs? Thank you very much. please, you guys. You're welcome to bring food to the table. It's a pretty informal meeting. Right, Wendy and TJ, welcome back, guys. This is a great report, so we'll rip straight into it. Any key points you'd like to raise, please?
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, we're really pleased to present this report as well. While the report is for Q4, we do feel it's a really good reflection on the last 12 months of work that's gone on. And I think having had 2 external audits done within that time as well, which has been a really good measure for us just to understand that kind of shift, particularly for the safety culture audit and the feedback and comments that we received from that report. We know that there's still a lot of work to do, and we do have a continuous improvement mindset. However, it is good to know the right things are being done and we're heading in the right direction. So we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So, folk, do we have questions for Wendy or TJ here? Let me start off. It's interesting what you focus on. And firstly, I wanted to say well done on a tremendous power of work to get these folk going, and particularly the emphasis on what I think you would call a lead indicators, which is energising, engaging, getting staff going, which is a really important point. I was interested... I was interested in actually where you got to with your risks, your health and safety risks. What interested me was the 2,190 controls, and we probably haven't had much of a discussion here. Other than me, I think I did ask before, how do you work out the efficacy of a control, by the way, which hopefully it doesn't depress my colleague Wendy as an auditor, because I don't know how I'd work it out, but there must be some way. What can you tell me about 2,190 controls? It sounds like a lot. We're a big organisation, but what sort of focus do you bring to those controls as in contrast to just analysing and dealing with the risks?
There are a couple of things I'll say on that. So in our risk profiles, there are 29 risks that we've identified across the organisation, present in various different places, and those risks have stated controls in the risk register. The 2,000 odd that is in this report represents a series of duplications of those controls across the various business groups.
Right.
So they are not 2,000 unique controls. They are the same controls coming up over 2,000 times across the organisation. As to efficacy, and I think there was a point I made in the Q&A around some controls are more effective than others. Elimination, isolation controls are going to be more effective than the likes of PPE and administrative controls. And so through the workshops, we asked workshop participants to discuss with the health and safety business partners their view on the efficacy of the controls inside of their working environment. That was across, I believe, 4 key efficacy markers, obviously the top representing 100% effective and then going down 25% to 0. So what you're seeing in the calculations in the summary report are the accumulation of those self-identified efficacy ratings.
So you've identified 2,090 controls, whatever the number is, or times the controls come in place. I take it your work with the teams also analysed are the gaps in those controls, correct?
Absolutely. The discussions that were had during the workshops were about understanding, are the controls in place? Are they effective? Is there something, through your experience of working in this environment, that we could do differently? That then leads on to the significant number of actions that were created as a result. And so that is then what informs a series of planning over the next 12 months. And so there's a range of enterprise controls that were created. They'll form the health and safety continuous improvement plan, but there are a range of local controls that were created as well, and they have been integrated into the business unit level annual health and safety planning.
I was interested, I was going to ask probably a rather facile question, around health and safety reps, and your target's I think 1 in 19, which seems like a reasonable number. And I was going to ask what do they do, which is a wee bit unfair, I think. What I am interested in is under your report and the first pillar, which is a strong culture. If I took it looking ahead, my phraseology is actually you want to integrate health and safety leadership into business as usual. Can you just clarify or expand for me? What does that actually take to do that? Because I'm assuming we aren't there yet. Sorry, is the obvious assumption behind my question.
Yeah, I think it's a fair assumption. It's going to take working across the organisation effectively. At the moment, in the culture and capability team, there is work being done on a refreshed leadership development program, and so we are working closely with that team to ensure that safety is integrated through all aspects of that program, as we do with various other cross-cutting themes of importance in the organisation. So that is what we mean by integrating. We believe it's the most effective way, the most useful approach, as opposed to what has perhaps been done in the past, which is tacking on, I guess, a health and safety leadership module at the end of other leadership work.
Mm. Well, look, in that light, a shout out to the 3 ELT members and 3 councillors that got out on the road and had a look. I know it's probably not appropriate to name them, but whoever they are, well done. I think that's tremendous because in terms of the obligations under the Act, that strikes me as a really important step. So well done to whoever those people are. And if you aren't one of them, I would encourage you to consider, obviously, what's part of your program, TJ. So well done. Folk, do we have other questions? A whole lot there. So Iona and then Tony.
You do mention personal confrontation. Just curious if you're seeing some more extremist behaviour, and because it seems like it is ramping up all around the world. Obviously, it's not just Wellington, and really how we sort of deal with that.
Yes, I think there are some comments in the report that we have seen an increase in the severity of some of what our people are experiencing. There was an interesting anomaly in that our volume of personal confrontation reported was down this quarter. We don't expect that to be sustained, but what we have been trying to understand in more detail with the organisation is how severe are these events and are they getting worse? There are some pockets where that is happening, but we know that this is a global trend. We're doing everything we can within our power to equip our people with the right tools to manage those situations, but I'm always open to suggestions for what else we could be doing.
Does this include support to councillors?
Could you perhaps elaborate?
Well, some people are more likely to be targeted than others by some very crazy people, to be honest.
Through you, Chair, the councillor safety can continue to be navigated through our security team and to continue to work with you to highlight what those areas are and provide guidance and support on that.
Yeah, so I guess the point is that the elected members are considered just as important as staff, right? Because some people do take more attacks than others. So I guess would there be some, I don't know, is it a policy, is it a campaign around, that violence and extreme views against certain people aren't okay? And I'm particularly putting on my track hat here, because that's one group of people that are getting attacked. So, I think we need to put a strong voice around that, and obviously my colleagues may have some other views and personal experience which is useful to share too, just in terms of taking a more proactive role.
Thanks, Anna. And I'd look at it, suggest also there has been some advice as to how to pick that one up, so I'd like to encourage that. Tony, you've got a...
Yes, I sort of had a similar question about the personal confrontation thing, which you've already addressed. So thank you for that. I know it's sometimes tough on the front line, and I'm glad that you guys are there to help. I also wanted to ask a question. your exercise around the enterprise critical risk review, I thought was very interesting, getting right out into the organisation and workshopping. I guess I've got two questions. One is, in terms of the volume of risks that were identified coming through, I mean, are they all able to be handled? Was there anything particular you want to note about what you found having gone face-to-face across the organisation?
Through the workshops, we didn't identify any critical failures. I think you'll see the overall efficacy score set around the mid 70%, indicating that there is a little bit more work that we can do to improve that, but there were no glaring failures that we needed to address immediately.
Okay, that's good. And just in terms of rounding it out and next steps, that's you sort of are working on those, was it 29 or something risks? How long is that going to take? And we'll get an update, I guess, on your next report. Is that right?
Yeah, so from here on out, you'll receive regular updates on the actions that were generated in this first part. The second part is currently in planning at the moment. The expected delivery timeframe is an additional 12 months, noting that there are, I believe the balance is close to 15 additional risks that we will be analysing across the organisation in a similar fashion, but not to the same level of scope. We learned a lot through the process of the workshops in the last 12 months, and we've identified ways that we can do it more effectively. So we're aiming for 12 months, but we may deliver earlier. But you will receive updates as you have through this first part regularly through our reporting.
Okay. And so I'd just like to commend you, because I think, you know, you talk about people talk about continuous improvement, but that's actually walking the walk of actually getting out there proactively and making it happen. So thank you.
Absolutely agree. Thank you, Tony. I've got Ray, then Geordie, then Wendy.
I guess my question is a little bit similar to Iona's and what's happening in the world these days. And it seems to me that if you look at the violence that's actually occurred in the UK, it seems to have started from nothing to, you know, to something very big immediately. And I'm just wondering if we should actually have plans to actually discuss the possibility, if this happened here, what would our actions be? Or so do we need to, say, meet with the police to say that if that ever happened here, what would we do? And do we have a task force or a group that would handle this? Or do we just wait for it to happen and then decide what to do then?
Through you, Chair. This is not specific to this particular health and safety report, and we do have a security governance group and a significant amount of work behind the protective security requirements framework that we have put in place for our maturity framework. That includes, of course, having good relationships with central government and the intelligence agencies and looking proactively. It's not something we would be leading in health and safety. It's a security matter, and we would not be leading it full stop as a council. It would be a government-led response.
Thank you. Also, reflects on not doing nothing. We've got who? Geordie, Wendy, and then Nuridan.
Yeah, mine was a reflection on, you said that reporting on personal confrontation was down this quarter, but you didn't expect it to be sustained. And I guess I'm thinking from this perspective, we were making decisions informed based on what's reported to us. And I guess anecdotally, I haven't necessarily witnessed a change in the way people talk about the amount of personal confrontation they have, and maybe that's leading to your assumption that it won't be sustained. But yeah, how are we kind of measuring or responding to perhaps culture changes and willingness to report these things, or a feeling like they should be reported and that it'll bring about action in the future?
Correct. I think what we're hearing through the business partner team, which is where we have our strongest relationships, and that's how our operating model works, we know that personal confrontation has not suddenly disappeared, which is why I mentioned the drop being an anomaly in the data that won't be sustained. In terms of understanding how things are shifting and moving outside of just the numbers that we're receiving, that's why it's so important that we have a business partner model, because we not only look at the data for a sort of objective view, but we have the real qualitative conversations that sit behind that information to validate, is it correct, or is it just a thing that's happened this quarter? We know it's going to go back to normal, and then we can address it as we normally would.
So I guess a follow-up question from that, I guess, do you have any insight as to whether the culture from an organisational perspective has changed on, I guess, the acceptance of personal confrontation?
I think it has changed, but for the better. I'll elaborate on that. We have done a lot of work over the last 2-3 years in working with the business to understand that some behaviour is not acceptable, and we shouldn't be accepting it. We should be reporting it, and we should be taking action to learn from it and perhaps try and prevent it, or at the very least, recover from it well.
Could I ask one more?
Yes, go for it, Jordan.
This one wasn't related to personal confrontation, but I was looking at the average control efficacy by risk, and what I was starting to think about was, the people who are exposed to this risk. How in line is their assessment of risk with the actual risks that we're seeing people, or the actual, I guess, incidents that are occurring? Like, are we seeing that sort of aligning?
I don't quite understand the question.
I guess, yeah, I guess sometimes as like an individual actor, your perception of risk isn't necessarily equal to the actual risk you face. And I guess, are we... I guess it's about that individual person where they're putting their energy. Are we putting energy into the appropriate risks, or what's the way of going about making sure that people are mitigating the right things?
Yeah, okay. I think that's why activities like the critical risk review are really important, because it looks at, in great detail, the way that people feel about risk, but also the reality of what is happening on the ground. I think it's important to also note that that exercise was done in a group environment, and so it's not heavily swayed by an individual view, but rather a representative view of an entire group in the organisation.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Geordie. Wendy.
Thank you. And really enjoyed reading the report. It's been great to sort of, even in the relatively short time I've been here, to see the advances you've made. So just a sort of a thank you there. Two questions, if I may, Chair. Well, one's probably a suggestion, but the prioritised actions, or sorry, the actions that you say, there's quite a body of them, there's over 500. Is it similar, will you be going through that similar process that you talked about, the not necessarily unique 2,000 controls? Surely these things have themes, and because where I was going is, how do we prioritise, what's the level of investment, how are they already things that we're doing or planning to do? Is that what we would expect to see come in the next report when you analyse it?
That's absolutely correct. So in those actions, the significant number of them, there are a range of duplication, particularly in the enterprise actions, and that's to be expected. So a lot of themes around training, and I think what you see in the themes of the report reflect the themes of the actions that have come through. So there will be a significant amount of work done to, I guess, condense, remove the duplication, and then prioritise what's going to deliver the most impact with the least amount of work. Probably not put right, but I think you understand what I mean.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think in that it will be good to sort of say the level of investment and how is it actually reducing the risk will be a good way to sort of tell that story, if you like. The other area for me was just understanding how you and the team, or the council, stays across sort of changes in how health and safety, risk management or governance is happening. I'm kind of two things that I guess for me was sort of the IOD and WorkSafe putting out recent refreshed guidance, and the outcome of the Susie Wilde's court case. So there might not, the facts and circumstances, I realise, for each situation is very different, but it's just how as a team you stay across those developments and think about relevance and implications for council.
Yeah, there are a range of things. We obviously have a business partner team that is interested in the industry, and so we, as a whole group, tend to stay very connected to what's going on. Even just this morning, we were discussing updates to WorkSafe guidance. There's also additional opportunities in our interactions with auditors to discuss changes in the environment. I was just discussing with the auditor to recently, the updated Institute of Directors governance guides. So that's kind of how we stay across there. There's also, from a system perspective, there is in the document review cycle of our safety management system documents, there is part of the procedure to look at how the environment or the understanding of that particular subject matter has changed, and that includes looking at legislative or other kind of change that may impact how we go about doing that work safely.
Great, thank you.
Can I just add, Chair, we are also members of the Business Leaders Health and Safety Forum, of which Barbara is also very active, and myself and Wendy, and we also receive regular legal updates. So the most recent case law we work through as well.
Thank you for that. Nuruddin's just gone. Okay, he was next, but is not here. So, rightio. Any other questions for folk here? Perhaps if I could invite you to just catch up with Nuruddin if he comes back as to what his question was, that would be great. Thank you. That's really informative. Well done. I do love the idea of that sort of annual assessment that you've given us, and it's been very insightful. Can we move to the resolutions, please? Which is about to appear on my screen, which is, hello, we received the report. That seems, as always, a somewhat small one. Have a move in a second, please. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Tony. Is there any debate on the motion? Well, I think we're all passing this with thanks to these guys for the hard yards that they're doing. Can I ask you to vote, please? Thank you, Wendy and TJ. That was great. Iona, are you voting? Look at that. You see, I'm a blinging man for detail. No, not. Right, insurance update. Oh, this is exciting. Sarah, welcome to the table.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that's excited about insurance for us.
Look, it's doing the rounds of the sector. There's no two ways about this. Is a very significant topic around the local government sector at the moment, let alone for us in Wellington. So look, in your hands, Sarah, please, if you could just tell us the key points, that would be great.
Yeah, look, I'll take the paper largely as read. Just a few highlights out of the paper. A wee market update there. The market was a lot more accommodating this year than last year. As we went and placed our 31 May renewals of our material damage policies, which are our three big ones. We do still have more policies to fill for the rest of the year, so this is only sort of the first start, but they are the most material. In terms of results, I will provide a sort of a bit of a commercial debrief on where we landed, just at the request of our insurance to keep that sensitive information out of sort of the public. But at a high level, this is the best outcome we've had since 2017, where we've filled the whole stack all the way up without any what we call ventilation, which is sort of gaps in the puzzle, if you like. We've also had an opportunity to add an additional $100 million to the capacity, so the overall level would lift from a different market. So we've had some reverse inquiry out of the US to provide us with that, to diversify their risk and help us out. The paper also covered our roadmap activity that we've been working on diligently in the background. Again, I've got a hot off the press this morning modelling update. It's not finalised yet, but I've got an in-progress update, whatever you want to call that, and I'll provide that this afternoon at the PX session as well. And then there's a bit of detail in there, some teasers about what we could look at for our alternative risk transfer potential options there for that. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Sarah. Folk, do you have questions for Sarah at this point of our paper? No? Yes, Iona.
Still concerned about residents.
Yep.
So do you think any of this is useful to help people locally, or at least to lobby the government about how we deal with insurance? A developer was just saying to me it would just be better if the government handled residential insurance. This is kind of an interesting concept.
Yeah, I mean, they help out with the EQC levies, which have increased recently. Obviously, that's gone from 150 per dwelling to 300 per dwelling, so it's not that nothing is being done here. Look, I think where the opportunity for us, and that intersects with our residents, our communities, is some of these alternative risk transfer methods that we are looking to navigate as a council can be options that then can be developed for the New Zealand or even Wellington context so that they could be rolled out. So there's it's going to be a partnering with the sector, and then we can tell the story of that to our residents and then inform them on the relationships they can have with their insurance company, particularly those big apartment buildings and things like that where they have a bulk amount of housing units that can be put into an insurance policy together. You know, something like a parametric or similar could be considered for that. We, through the modelling, which I'll talk to you about this afternoon, we're cognisant of more of our CCOs, which are obviously our own entities that we are looking at their specific risks and things that's kind of coupling in with what we're doing for the wider council portfolio. So we are cognisant that is still something we need to work through, Iona, but it's got to be a cascading effect as we get through this roadmap and understand more of the options that are out there to help out the communities.
So people are hurting now and are not insuring now. I'm not sure where Minister Pink is at, but obviously we could maybe make a contribution to the review around the earthquake-prone buildings.
I can take that back to the CFO and discuss that with her.
Yeah, just I mean, and the Mayor will possibly have a better idea, but I mean, just insurance is the big one for prone buildings, obviously. Yep.
Thank you. I've got Gordy first, and I've got Tony and then Tim.
Yeah, I tried to do some additional reading on captive insurance to try and get my head around it. I can understand the benefits that you've outlined there that it would provide, and perhaps I can ask for more detail about this later, but I'm not, I guess, as confident in terms of what it is that the arrangement by including an entity between the reinsurer and us, like what mechanisms it actually utilises to provide those benefits.
So essentially with the captive insurance product, so just to caveat all of this, we are looking to provide workshops. We'll work with Bruce to put in some time, specifically focus on it, because they're very technical, right? And it's hard to articulate what those benefits are. But essentially with the captive insurance piece, it is an entity that acts as an insurer for us. So we would have to capitalise that, so put some of our money into it, so it has money behind it. I'm trying to not be too technical, but also not be too basic at the same time here. But essentially, it puts buying power, so it will sit in alongside our Swiss Re and our. I'm struggling to think of other insurance companies now, but it would sit in next to them, and it would provide, and it would essentially sell us insurance that fills the gaps. So there's a bit of talk about ventilation in here, and those have been problematic parts of our cover to place. And this is at arm's length, but it's at our discretion whether we replace some of those insurance lines that may be more expensive or we can't fill the gaps with our own. Probably shouldn't say this out loud, but our own pet insurance company, if that makes sense. So it sits alongside the others, and we can say, well, we're not going to take your expensive cover, we're going to place it ourselves, and it diversifies our ability to cover more of our risk. Does that help to explain what advantages it adds?
It does. I think I can probably look forward to a workshop. I think it's a visual thing for me, I think. So.
Okay, workshop will be in the mix.
Thank you for that, Geordie. And I've got Tony and then Tim.
Yes, so thank you for your work and also diving in deep so we can get a good deal and coverage that we need. I think it's become essential, but it's also a success.
Yeah, it was. You're welcome. It was a pleasure to do this year. It was a lot easier.
So my question is really to say. There's some notes there. I'm sort of surprised now that even, the presence of El Niño will change the insurance rates and things like this. I was wondering if you had a general comment, without giving away any secrets, about the insurance market's attitude to Wellington, and whether or not it's sort of, now that Christchurch is sort of disappearing a bit into the background and other things are now changing focus. Is the attitude to Wellington City from the insurance market, is it changing, or is it still we're a high risk area, or what?
I think probably the messaging that comes out, and particularly from this reverse inquiry out of the US, we are still assumed to be a seismic risk, but the market actually likes us at the moment because because we, being in their portfolio, so if you think about it from the seller's perspective, we being in their portfolio diversifies them from other risks, so whether that be geographical or the type of risk that they're covering. So we are not big storm risk in the US, right, which is, with the impacts of climate change, etc., you're seeing more incidents of landfall of these hurricanes and things like that in the US. We have seismic risk, so we are completely different from that. Insurers have a mandate to diversify their portfolio and where they're deploying their capital. So in the US, pretty much they don't offer insurance capacity to the New Zealand market, probably because we're unknown, we're too small, and so we have to go to London and tell the story of Wellington, and that sets us apart from our neighbours and our peers, but also from, say, Japanese earthquake risk or US earthquake risk. So they like us. It's evident through the market this year that they've got plenty of capital to sort of send out, and we've taken advantage of that. Yeah.
So, Tim.
A few questions. The first one is, for the workshop, not just for Geordie's benefit, would you mind seeing if you could invite the CFO from Wellington Airport to come in and explain how their self-insurance vehicle works? Because I feel that practical example would be, very informative for the people. It would be, because also it's only been going about 5 years, so it would also show the benefits which they've achieved in that relatively small amount of time.
Mm-hmm. That's for the captive piece.
Yeah,
Tim?
yeah. The second question I've got is that our insurance cost last year was about 3.35% of the cost of cover.
Can we, I did receive your email and I have to re-engage with that. So I think I haven't had a chance to...
No, this is about more of a macro question.
Yep.
It's just that 3% seems like a very high expense. I mean, again, to refer to Wellington Airport, who disclosed their insurance costs, they're paying about 1%. And I asked a major Wellington property owner what he's paying for insurance, and it was about 1%. So I was just trying to struggle to why are we paying such a large premium for the cover?
Again, I'll have to get back to you on that one, Tim. I haven't looked at those numbers, but I don't think that 3%... Are you talking about the overall cost of council? This is a proportion of their costs, or...?
Well, last year we disclosed, I think, that we had just a bit under $800 million of cover.
Yep.
And we were paying $25 million of insurance premium. 25 million divided by 800 gives you about 3.25% or something.
So I'll have to take that one offline and I'll come back to you. I'm more than happy to catch up on that.
My last question is more of a macro one about the insurance market. I mean, the Reserve Bank obviously now does periodic reporting on the insurance market and specifically provides information about average insurance costs in Wellington, which I think have doubled in something like 4 years or thereabouts. Mm-hmm. And they're obviously referencing to this lack of capacity in the global market, and I also make sure I follow the international media, which tends to indicate that the international market continues to struggle. As you said, we've got a particularly unusual risk, which is helpful, earthquake rather than storm. Mm-hmm. But the global market capacity seems to have been diminished because of the $200 billion plus claims that have been occurring in recent years. Mm-hmm. And the Reserve Bank seemed to be kind of thinking that was going to be an ongoing problem. And so I guess I'm sort of looking at you've done a great job, obviously, by lowering the cost this year and by achieving a greater level of cover. But do you see there's an ongoing macro problem in the market that?
Well, that's an ongoing macro problem with climate change, Age.
Hi, Ben.
Yeah, I think we can shed a hope with climate change. So I'm not disagreeing, but I guess it's
Yeah, I think at a high level response to that, I think I've understood that. But look, that's why we need these as Wellington City Council. So one, we need to understand our risk, which is what we're doing through the modelling, and two, we need alternative risk transfer solutions because the traditional buying insurance doesn't meet our requirements in terms of future-proofing the city and how, when and if those events happen, how we respond to them. So that's why the roadmap work, I think, in my perspective, is really critical to keep the momentum up with that.
Thank you, Tim. Wendy.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Just a quick question, just maybe for the workshop. I think I was looking at the catastrophe bond option you've got there, and obviously I haven't done the reading that Geordie has done. It looked to me, I guess the question I had there is, clearly EQC was successful and it was good precedent setting and the like. What is the market capacity there, or what's the demand for this product? I just wanted, just in a general sense, and if it's
I think there's it's a global market that New Zealand has traditionally not participated in because it's technical, complicated, and you actually have to domicile it offshore. So the local government sector, to date, as far as I know, hasn't really looked at this in any serious way. The benefits to it, to us, would be it would diversify our insurance coverage, and in that it can be a 3 to 4 year insurance placement. So in other words, instead of our 1 year every year go and replace the cover we have, it's a set, not a set and forget, it's a set and revisit each year, but that capital is available exclusively to us for a 3 to 4 year period, depending on what goes in the contract. So and it's the capital is sitting in a vehicle, so we know for certain that it's there. So event happens, we know we can go and get access to that, and nobody else has the right to it. We do pay premiums have come closer to what you pay for your traditional insurance in recent years, and that's why it has now become a good option for us to get that additional capital through something like this. EQC, we've had some catch-ups with them. They said it was a really great process because their board, etc., learned a lot about the insurance market, but they see it as a really good supplemental add-on to their access to capital at a relatively risk-free position for them, because it's not their money that's sitting there at risk, like it would be through the captive scenario.
Yeah, no, that's right. I was just interested in the nature of the market and how mature and well functioning it was. But that can,
very well mature. It intersects with the sort of treasury and funding market as well. So you've got a lot of exposure to different pots of capital, if you like. And there's a lot. We've got plenty of collateral in there from EQC about upwards of, I'm making numbers up, but billions of dollars available to the market.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. Great.
Thanks very much. You're talking about New Zealand being in a unique position, as because we're such a small market, and of course we're susceptible to earthquakes and things. But there are a lot of other countries that are also susceptible to earthquakes. So how do countries like Japan and Taiwan, how do they cope with insurance? Are they in the same market that we are? Like when we go to London and bid with Lloyd's, is it a bidding contest, or do they just allocate a certain amount of money to each particular region?
I can't really comment on that, Ray. It's a little bit further afield than I've sort of looked into, but how I understand it is Japan in particular are very sophisticated with the types of products that they have on offer to them. Rightly or wrongly, I don't think New Zealand is super advanced in taking advantage of some of these alternative risk transfer methods. We're trying to be at the forefront of that to help to lead the discussion across the sector and hopefully to our communities, back to Iona's point. But aside from that, I can't really comment on how much capacity they would be allocated. The key difference being we are geographically separate from them. So the insurance market would view that as a risk of having an event here and there, although it has happened before, is lower because we are far away from Japan or the US or Turkey or wherever these big events occur.
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Ray. Any other questions? I missed anybody out? That's been very informative, and I must confess, I think everybody's keen for the next workshop. I will be very interested in the loss modelling exercise as well, because that sets the base up, doesn't it, in my view, for what we've got to try and achieve, and then all of a sudden the different instruments become incredibly relevant. So that would be useful. So look, I'm just conscious that we do have a further confidential briefing from you on the actual commercial reality of our placement this year. So I just wonder if we could move, please, to the resolutions, which is that we receive Sarah's report, and Andy's, by the way. I noticed anybody
She's on holiday. I had to turn up.
We note the renewal that has occurred and the risk modelling updates and the roadmap, and we endorse further investigation to alternative risk transfer methods. And I'm making the assumption that we can do that, that we are supportive of the endorsing because of our nature of the questioning today. The person prepared to move that, please. Anybody prepared to move? Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Iona. Is any debate on the motion? There be none, can you please take your remote and vote, please? Thank you, Sarah. We're waiting on John. I think we can take it that the motion is passed. Thank you. If we could then move, please, to the decision register updates and upcoming reports. Probably that should be led by me, I think, given the absence of. I was about to say Stephen. Actually, I'm showing. Oh, where's Steve? G'day, Diane. G'day, Laurie. Welcome to the meeting, you guys. By the way, before Nuridan, you had a question, I think, under health and safety, and I asked TJ and Wendy to make contact with you if you wanted to pursue that, mate. Just in case we get that. Look, I wonder if folk could just move to item 2.7. And look, I'm reasonably happy we take this as read. The program is where it's at. I do have a couple of questions, but look, just when life gets back to normal, if I can be honest, if it's ever possible with ELT, there are a couple of questions I have around what is and isn't on our program. I sense there's a couple of papers that may well have come here today which haven't, but I'm not overly exercised on that. I think the other thing to recognise is our next formal meeting's the 22nd of October, but we've already worked out a couple of workshops, one of which is the annual report workshop in that week starting the 10th of September, obviously specific in relationship to the annual report, so that we can do our work on the 22nd, which will obviously be dominated by the recommending the annual report adoption to council. Are there any questions or comments which I'll probably have to send staff away to deal with on this paper? Being none, can we just move to receiving the information? Seeing I've done the talking, I'm going to move it. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Tony. So if you could take your remotes, please, and vote on that, that would be.
So I know that staff are trying to make sure all our decisions are on a database, but really I find a one-page document showing where everything is at probably more helpful. So, and I think, sorry, this isn't a basic admin point, it is an accountability point about making sure that it is easy to track what we're doing and what we haven't done as a committee.
So you'd like the decisions enumerated in those which have been closed off?
We used to have it, and then it was a sort of a formatting thing. It was done, wasn't done, but I just think we should be able to see quite easily where we're at.
At least the two that are outstanding. Yeah. Okay, I wonder if we could share that one through, that'd be great. Could I invite folk to vote, please? Ray, are you going to vote, sir? Thank you. It's carried. Thank you very much. If we just look at the motion to exclude the public, we have some general updates from Beth. We haven't got Siobhan through illness and Barbara through illness, but we also have Sarah through the commercial relation matters with the insurance, and we also have our session with Laura and Karen as our auditors. For those reasons, I'm comfortable to be taken into PX, so I'll move from the chair that we do so. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Tony. Is there any discussion on the motion? Being none, I ask you to take your remote and vote, please. Ooh. Thank you. Appreciate that. Carried. Right. If we could These in the closing karakia. Unahia, unahia, unahia ki te uru tapanui. Kia watea, kia mama, te nako, te tinana, te warua. E te aratakatu, koe ra e rongo, whakairi ki ronga, kia watea, ai ra, kia watea. Thank you very much. The meeting's concluded.